There we go. And then I'll post it up, and but with the PowerPoint slides, I'll refresh those. I'll put the new ones up too, so you guys will have the good ones. Okay. All right. So we're going to be talking about strategy and introduction to strategic management. In this particular chapter, we're going to define what strategic management is. There's 4 different managerial actions that go along with that, looking at the process and the different interrelated stages of strategic management. We're going to define and look at the differences between the vision statement and the mission statement. And then as well, we're going to be looking at goals and objectives and the relationship to goals and objectives as it relates to vision and mission and as it relates to the strategy. So strategy, as a definition, is management's plan for achieving a goal, positioning that firm in such a way that it sells more products or provides more service than the competition, so as to improve that firm's financial and market performance. Now, with strategy, it acts as a guide to the actions that the different functional areas need to take. So as an example, let's say that Jocelyn has a company in Southern California, and Jocelyn decides that she has been doing really, really well in Southern California, and she thinks that expanding her company into Arizona would be a growth strategy and a growth maneuver for her, and a good strategy. Now, before Jocelyn moves her or opens that particular geographic area for her company, and there are certain things that need to be done to provide her a reasonable assurance that her strategy is going to be successful. And one of those things is marketing. Marketing's job is to go out there and do some research to see whether or not those consumers in that area are going to want to buy the product that Jocelyn is going to be selling. Their other job is going to be looking at competition. They're going to be looking at quality of the other products, quality of Jocelyn's products. They're going to be looking at what kind of demands to expect out there. In other words, they're going to have to do a bunch of research. You guys agree with that? Now, that's a functional area. And you can see how important that function is to Jocelyn's strategy. They're the ones that are going to come back and say, Jocelyn, yeah, they're going to be interested in this particular product. I think it's a go. I think we're going to have a market over there for what it is that we want to provide them. So it is important. But in addition to that, you got operations. Operations has to be able to manufacture that product, provide that product. Then you have sales, and then you have finance. Finance is going to have to make sure that they got the revenue or the resources to support this strategic operation. HR has to hire the people. Information system has to take all the data that's going to come from that area and have that data be stored securely on headquarters servers. So all of the functional areas of that firm are going to be involved in this strategy. So strategy does act as a guide to those various functional departments. Also, it is a set of decision-making rules for the guidance of that organizational behavior. These are those rules. We have to be able to measure our performance. Are we doing what we're intending to do by the time we stated that we're going to make these types of objectives? So we're going to be looking at the present and the future performance of that firm. And measuring that, the measuring of those performance areas would be the objectives of that. And looking at the end game of that, the quantity of that end game is the goals of that. That's the metric, but you have to be able to measure the performance. If we're not performing as well as we should, what do we need to do to correct that? We also have to determine what market we're going to be in. What products, what technology is the firm going to develop to meet the needs of those consumers? Where are we going to sell this? And to who are we going to sell this? And then how do we go about gaining a competitive advantage in this industry? Then we look at the organizational concept, that relationship between those functional areas. And that's important. All the functional areas need to be communicating with each other and coordinating their activities at such a time that best supports that strategy, calling on those activities when they best need them. And then, of course, we need to have rules to operate the firm on a day-to-day decisions. Now, with strategy, we have intended strategy. That's the strategy that you're formulating and implementing. But we know realistically that things happen. We know that the market's going to change. We know that technology can have an effect on our industry. We know that political changes, legal changes can have an effect on our industry that can have an effect on our demand. And we know that maybe we have better ideas on how we can provide a service or a product for that consumer. So even though we have a proactive intended strategy, our strategy is also reactive or emergent strategy. So it's able to adapt to those changing environmental conditions. Let's talk about tactics and how the tactics relate to strategy. So with your simulation, and with every firm out there, they have a limited amount of resources that they can work with. You only have a limited amount of workforce people. You only have a limited amount of capacity for manufacturing. You only have a limited amount of finances that you can support your activities. So that means you need to prioritize those resources the best way you possibly can. And one of the best ways of doing that is through tactics. Tactics is the how part of the strategic equation. That is, how are we going to get this particular strategy done most effectively and efficiently so we can focus then on that one part, that tactical area there to support that overall strategy. So the strategy is your long-term, achieving those long-term goals and objectives. And then the specific part of it is the tactics of that. In an organization, strategy is going to be formulated by senior management with the support of the functional areas. So, and the reason for that is quite simple. You have the major strategy that is being formulated, but now they need, or senior leadership needs to know whether or not the functional areas are able to support that strategy. So they have them involved in that strategic meeting. You know, will marketing be able to do what they need to do? Will finance have the money to do what we need to do? Will HR be able to get the people that we need to have? So they're involved in that formulation of that strategy. Then the tactics are going to be formulated by the functional head. What's the best way of gaining this market share? So an example of a tactic might be that you want to gain a larger market share, but instead of spending all your marketing and promotional dollars in several different areas, the tactic might be just to focus that money in a particular area to gain that market share. And then the tactics are going to be implemented by the junior level officers. So here's an example, kind of an easy way to explain tactics and strategy. So strategy would be to take the river, but the tactic, this is the how-to part of it. Well, we're going to use a boat to take the river. So it kind of puts it into perspective there. So let's take a look at the different schools of strategy that are going to be going into this course here. There's actually 12 different schools, but 5 of them are the major schools, and that's really what we've incorporated in this particular course. The first one is the design school. And the design school is that strategic formulation that looks for the fit, that strategic fit between those strengths and weaknesses of the firm and the threats and opportunities that firm has. And it's, well, of course, one of the first things we're going to be doing is a SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis that we do, though, is going to be a little bit different. Now, let me ask you guys a question. I'm sure by this point in your college career, you've done a SWOT analysis, correct? Right? How did you do them? Did you list the strengths and did you list the weaknesses and then the opportunities and then the threats, and then you kind of reviewed them? Is that pretty much how you did it? All right. With strategic management, what we do is we call SWOT matching. We do the same thing. We list our strengths and then we list our weaknesses and then we list our opportunities and then our threats. But then what we do is we take another step farther for analysis. All right, can this strength be used to capitalize on this opportunity? And if it does, then we put it in a SWOT matching box. Can this weakness be mitigated by one of these opportunities out there? Now, that might seem silly to say that. If we're weak at something, how can an opportunity help us mitigate a weakness? But think about this. Let's say back to Jocelyn and her company. She's realized by doing a SWOT analysis that one of her weaknesses is that her manufacturing costs are too high in that area. But an opportunity is for her to relocate her manufacturing to a lower cost area for manufacturing. So by taking advantage of that opportunity, it mitigated that weakness that she had of high manufacturing costs. So not only are we looking to capitalize on the opportunities with our strengths, we're looking at mitigating our weaknesses through our opportunities. And of course, we're looking at our strengths and how do we get rid of those threats out there. So when we're going to do SWOT matching, we'll be looking at that in our next session out there. So that's the design school. Second one here is the planning school. This is a theory of strategic management that was developed by H. Igor Ansoff. Ansoff was called the father of strategic management. My doctorate is in Ansoffian strategic management. It is much more complex and has many more analytical approaches than most of the other schools of strategic thought. It's a very formalized process, has distinct steps and checklists to follow. It looks at the whole organization, the budgets, the objectives, the programs, the operating plans. Included in this planning school, there is something called the strategic posture, where you actually determine what is that posture of that firm through a series of analysis tools. And then you analyze the environment in which that firm is competing. Is it a turbulent environment? That's called an ETL assessment. And then what we look at is the strategic budget. Now, with the strategic budget, there's 3 buckets that the firm must invest in order for that firm to have a chance to break even. You have marketing, you have operations, and you have strategic. So think about this for a second. You're going to be competing in an industry, and within this industry, the average marketing budget out there is $50,000 average. Your marketing budget is $25,000. How effective is your strategy going to be relative to those others in that industry? Well, it's going to be less effective. The same with operations. If you don't have the amount of money in operations, to be less effective. So there's actually a graph and a way that you can determine this. And it has to do with minimum investments and maximum investments and return on investments. So you have to put in at least a minimum in all 3 of those buckets: marketing, operations, strategy, in order for that firm to break even. Anything above that, you're going to have a higher return on investment up to a point. So that would, that's part of Ansoff. The other thing is capabilities assessment. Now, the capabilities assessment actually runs into and aligns with the next one that we're going to be looking at, which is the resource-based view. And then the last one is change management. That's another part of the planning school. Now, with change management, what we're analyzing is the firm, those employees, and the systems, whether or not they're going to be change supportive or change averse. There are, within an organization, there's going to be groups of people and individuals that may not like that new strategic change. And as such, they're going to resist. Maybe that particular strategic change is going to have a negative effect on a department. Well, those in the department aren't going to be willing to really support that strategy if their jobs are going to be threatened. So we need to make, before you implement that strategy, an assessment of who in the department or who in the organization is going to support or resist this strategy. And in the second area, you look at the systems. Will the systems accommodate what this new strategy is going to do? So if we go back to Jocelyn's expansion, will the new data that's coming out of that expansion area, will it be able to reside on the servers at Jocelyn's headquarters? And if the servers aren't large enough to do that, now we have a system barrier. So we have to work on getting that system large enough so that we'll be able to accommodate it. So there's going to be a resistance to that. All right, here's our next one, and that's the positioning school. This is Porter. A lot of what we're going to be looking at today, or within the next few weeks, is going to be Porter. Porter based it on Sun Tzu, and that's looking at your competition out there. What's your competition doing? Back in the 80s, this was like the easiest approach for managers to determine what their strategy is, because it really is only 4 different ways that you can do it. So Porter says, your company is either providing a product or providing a service based on low cost. That's one strategy. Or you're providing a service or a product based on differentiation, the uniqueness of that product. There's a second strategy. Or you're taking that product, the low cost one, and you're selling it specifically to a focused area. That's the third strategy. Or you're selling that product or service to a broad area, fourth strategy. So it was really easy for managers back in the 1980s. They'd read the book and they go, well, let's see. I'm not differentiation, so I must be low cost, and I'm not selling it to a focused area, so I must be broad. So it was really a process of elimination. Well, the problem is that that's not the right way to formulate and implement a strategy. But we are going to be looking at that, and we are going to be doing that. And you're going to be determining at the end of the course whether or not that company that you are analyzing is going either cost or differentiation, focused or broad. Other things that came out of Porter, which are really good things, was strategic groups. Who really in this strategic group is our competition? This is a way of identifying your greatest competitor. We also look at value chain analysis. Yeah, somebody asked me a question.
Yeah, so I have a question about,
Sure.
You were saying like the fourth one, I think, was like, could be due to being broad.
Yeah, so let me explain that for you,
Can you
okay?
like go in depth a little bit what that means?
Sure. Good question, Isaiah. So let's do this. All right, I'm going to give you an example. Motel 6, are they selling their product or providing their service based on low cost, or are they uniquely different?
Well, I think it's based on cost.
Right, they are. They're a low cost provider. Now,
Yeah.
Are they providing that particular service to a small market or to a large market?
I would say probably a large market.
Good. So that strategy then is low cost, broad. So they're selling it to a broad market. Does that make sense, Isaiah?
Yeah, so another example could be like maybe a Hyatt, right? Maybe they would be like a small market, maybe because they're more expensive, right?
Well, first of all, let's determine, are they going to be cost or differentiation?
Probably differentiation.
Differentiation. So they're going to be providing a service that is not based on low cost. It's based on uniqueness or a perceived uniqueness, right?
Yeah.
Right. And are they trying to sell it to a large area, or are they trying to focus that to a certain buying group?
I would say it would be a focused area, right?
Right. So there's another example then. It's kind of a larger focus group, but certainly it's not to, the Motel 6 group, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Did that help understand?
Yeah. I understand what you're saying now.
Okay.
Thank
Good.
you.
All right. Okay, let's go to the next one here. This is the resource-based theory. Now, this one here has to do with an internal analysis of your firm. And what we're trying to find out here is what kind of capabilities does that firm have that can support that strategy that the firm is intending to use. So we need to identify that. We need to assemble that. We need to then exploit any of those capabilities and the resources that we would have available. Now, the thing about a resource-based theory is that they're looking not only internally, but they're looking externally too. And they're trying to find that perfect fit between that opportunity that's out there and the resources and capabilities that they've identified. So through your analysis internally, we've identified that we're really, really good at these capabilities and we have these resources available. And there's an opportunity out there that those capabilities and resources fits really well. That's called a strategic fit. That's the best kind of opportunity to pursue. So we're looking through resource-based theory for those types of strategic fits. And we're going to be doing that here in our analysis of the firm internally. The last one is the learning school. This was developed by a guy called Mintzberg. He wasn't a strategist. He was a org behavior guy, I believe. He felt that strategic planning was too formalized, too many analysis that you had to go through. It was lengthy, it was costly, and organizations didn't need to do formalized strategic planning. He wanted more of an approach that was emergent. As events happened, then the firm would just react to those events. Well, it doesn't work with medium and large size businesses. You can't just keep switching your strategy from one thing to another thing. It's very, very expensive to do that. And you lose market position and you lose revenue and profitability. It does work, however, for a startup company. You don't really know who your competition is yet. You really don't have your goods and services quite formalized yet. You haven't developed your customer base quite yet. So you're making adaptive changes all the time. So it does work for a startup company. So that's why it is included in here. It does have some benefits. Now let's talk about strategy and the firm. The long-term goals and objectives to maintain that competitive advantage can either come from a cost advantage or a differentiation advantage. But those two advantages really are determined by the operational effectiveness of that firm through the capabilities and the capacity and the commitment. Well, let me explain that for a second. So let's say that when we look at our capabilities, now the capabilities is the transference of your inputs to your outputs. That would be your material, that would be your labor, that would be your money, all of those things that input, and then the output would be the goods and services. So let's say that the firm, through their operational effectiveness, is very, very effective at keeping all of those costs down. All of your labor costs down, all of your manufacturing costs down, all of your marketing costs down. Well, perhaps then that firm might want to pursue a cost advantage. They got a good support on that. Let's say, however, your capabilities and your commitment and your capacities are all focused towards marketing and R&D, where you're developing brand new products and services. Now, what you might want to do is follow a strategy that is more differentiation, more unique in that marketplace. So it has to do with what that firm is really good at, the operational effectiveness. All right. Now, this whole idea of strategic management had to start from somewhere. It just didn't pop out. In fact, strategic management came from Ansoff. He's the one that came up with that term, strategic management. And from that, then we have this whole new study now in the area of strategic management. But it started way back when firms didn't do strategic management, didn't do strategic planning. And the only thing that they really had going for them was something called long-range planning. And long-range planning was quite simply done by looking at the performance of that firm in the past, What kind of demand did they have for the products? What kind of demand did they have for the service? What was their competitive position? What were the environmental factors for that firm? And if those factors remain the same, then what they're going to do is extrapolate that performance and move it forward and say, okay, our long range plan now is that we're going to be, this is our new direction that we're going now. I don't even want to use the word strategy because it wasn't strategy, but it's really based on historical information, past precedent. Now we know the danger there is that there's no guarantee that past performance is going to result in the same future performance. So now managers decided that, you know, this isn't the best way to manage our company. We need to actually take into account what that environment is really doing out there, and then be agile enough to adjust our strategy to account for those changes that are occurring in that strategy or in that environment. So they came up with strategic planning. Now you have a firm that's agile enough to respond to those changing environmental conditions out there. They can change their resources, and they can change their market direction and their promotion and their pricing and their product selection, and to determine what that future response, that future position of that firm is going to be. And that was working. Strategic planning did work, but it fell short. It didn't really plan for the whole organization. It didn't manage the whole organization. And so then Ansoff came up with strategic management. Now with strategic management, what we have is the analysis of that firm, analyzing both internal and external of that firm. So we making all these analysis, and then from our analysis, we can make an informed decision. And then from that informed decision, we can find out what is the correct action to take to position our firm going forward with the strategy, implement that strategy, and then we can evaluate how well that strategy is performing. So strategic management is the analysis, the decisions, the actions, and the evaluation. So when we're looking at the analysis, we're looking at analyzing the firm's goal, their vision, their mission, their strategic objectives, their current competitive position, using all those analysis tools. One of the areas that they assess is not only their current competitive position, but where is it that we want to go with our firm, and at what that time frame might be, and what will we need to have in order for us to attain that future competitive position as far as resources and capabilities. And then what they do is look at where they are and where they're going to go and what they need there, and they determine what that gap is. It's called a gap analysis, and they try and fill that gap analysis. The decisions, then, that's the formulation, the planning, the developing of the strategies based on these previous analyses, and then implementing those strategies and then evaluating those strategies to create a competitive advantage. Now with strategic management, it does combine strategic planning. We like that part. We like the fact that the firm is agile enough to adjust to those environmental changing conditions. But then we add the capabilities planning in there, looking at all the capabilities internally of that firm. And then we look at change management as well. And as I discussed, we're looking at both behavioral and systemic resistance when we look at change management. Now with change management, there's 4 characteristics of it. First of all, it's interdisciplinary. It's not focused on one specific unit of that firm. It's all of the firm. It's all the functional areas of that firm. We're looking at all of them. We're looking at external of that firm, that environment in which that firm is competing. In fact, we're going to be talking about that next week. And we're going to be using something that's called a PESTLE analysis. And that's an acronym for the different areas of the macro environment that we need to analyze. Internally, we look at the resources and the capabilities and the capacities of that firm. And then we want to take a look at what's the future of this organization? What's the future of this industry that we're in? What's it going to look like in 5 years? Well, that's a kind of a good question for you guys right now. What's the auto industry going to look like in 5 years? What's it going to look like in 10 years? Let's do that one a little bit better. What do you think the auto industry is going to look like in 10 years?
Shady as ever.
Shady as ever?
I think they're gonna go more towards electric vehicles, but I would just, seeing more posts about it, it still creates pollution, even electric vehicles somehow, some way, so I think we want to go towards more energy just because I think eventually we're gonna run out of gas or petroleum eventually, right?
Okay, all right, that's a good thought. Anybody else have a thought on that?
I think auto dealers are going to consolidate and kind of operate more like a CarMax or a Carvana, and not so many dealers with so much real estate. Even though the sales, I think, are still going to be there, I think it's just going to be easier if they consolidate and
All
not
right,
have so many dealers everywhere.
yeah, that sounds plausible. Anybody else? Isaiah, what do you think?
Well, I could totally see like the dealerships going definitely like more virtual, but and I think, if they do that, that might be beneficial to an organization because then they have less people on payroll and maybe they can even try to bring their costs down low in their inventory and other areas of business that I think could possibly increase their sales and
Okay.
help with everything else. But I mean, they obviously have to have a good marketing plan and figure out how they're gonna keep those sales with less people in the buildings and their overhead costs and all that other fun stuff. So
Right, yeah. Good. So at least we know that within 10 years, there's going to be some changes that are going to affect the auto industry. So one of the things that needs to be determined then, it would be, are these changes going to be good for us or are these changes going to threaten us? And then how do we position ourselves to take advantage of both? If it's an opportunity, what do we do to take advantage of that? And if it's a threat, what do we do to mitigate that threat? So looking at the future is always going to be a critical part of good strategic management. All right, 5 stages in the strategic management process. First of all, we want to take a look at the strategic vision and mission statement. Those are 2 important statements that support our goals and objectives and also are relational to our strategy. Then we look at the strategic goals and objectives, and we want to do what's called environmental scanning, looking at that macro environment to determine, are there any factors out there that can have an effect on our firm and our industry? We then formulate our strategy, we implement our strategy, and then we monitor, evaluate, and control. Those are the 5 stages of that. Now, what are some of the reasons that firms would change their strategy? Well, internally, maybe it's the capabilities that we have. Maybe we don't have the capabilities to support our strategy. Maybe we don't have the resources. Maybe we've just invented some things that is going to give us new opportunities in other markets. Maybe it's customer dissatisfaction, or maybe it's just the desire from those shareholders that we need to increase our performance and our profitability. Externally, one of the big drivers out there for companies changing their strategy is the customer, and also the competitor out there, investors and technology, and then finally the government. Well, here are the different stages in the strategic management process. We look at the vision statement, the mission statement. We set some goals, we set objectives, we do environmental scanning, we do an internal analysis and external analysis, and then we complete those performance matrices. We look at the change management to see whether or not that culture is going to support or resist that change. We do corporate governance and then social responsibility, making sure that our strategy is going to be socially responsible. As it aligns to the strategy formulation stage, The input stage, we look at our external factors evaluation and our internal factors evaluation. The external factors evaluation, we'll be doing that next week. We also do a competitive profile matrix. Now, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the SWOT matrix, it's in the matching stage because one of the things that we do with SWOT is SWOT matching, even though it's one of the first things that we do. So we kind of put it down in matching, but it's really up there with the input stage. And then we have the space matrix, the BCG, the IE, and the grand strategies. And then stage 3 is the quantitative strategic planning matrix. Now, there are many more that go in here, but these are the major ones. So let's take a look at what is a management vision. So it's management vision then affects the choice of that strategy. The strategy chooses the environment in which that firm is going to be competing. The environment now determines whether or not those goals and objectives are going to be attainable. And the goals affect the strategy that we're going to use and are going to be subject to the resource constraints of that organization. Management vision is also called the strategic vision or the management creed. So a vision statement is going to be a future vision. This is where the firm wants to go, what it is that we're trying to be, what it is that we're trying to achieve. So it's a future looking statement. It is that statement of tomorrow, why we're going to exist tomorrow. So a good vision statement should be a future course of that organization, should provide the purpose of that firm, should be a brief statement on how that firm is going to try and reach that particular vision. Mission statement, that's the here and now of that firm. It defines what that firm does, who it is, and what it is, the customers it serves, the values that that firm has. If you look at a mission statement, by reading that mission statement, you should have a clear understanding of what that firm does. It is its present business purpose. You're going to have a case study that's coming up, I think, in your strategic exercises having to do with Robinhood, I believe. And one of the things that you're going to probably look at in there is the mission statement of Robinhood, and trying to determine what is the mission statement, what is it that Robinhood does, and then kind of describing what that is. So the mission statement is the here and now. The French term for that would be the raison d'être, the reason for being. And it is part of what that vision statement is. So the mission statement is where we are now. The vision statement is where we're going to be, and the mission statement should try to help us get to that vision statement. So it needs to define what the company is, not what is not, or I should say, and what is not. It should define and distinguish that company from others. It should be able to evaluate its current activities, and it should be clear to understand. Limited statement, but broad enough for allowing creative growth. Here are the two of them relative to each other. So you have the vision statement, where we're going, what markets to pursue, future technology and products, what kind of company the management is trying to create. And of course, that should be, because it is a vision statement, we're not there yet, it should be a bit beyond the company's reach. The mission statement, that's current business activities. It is what we are. It is who we are. Our current products, our current services, the customers that we're being sold to. Technology, any kind of business capabilities. So it is the here and now of that. Now, values are an important part of the mission statement. In fact, many times the mission statement has the core values of that firm within the mission statement. It is the operating philosophies, principles that guide management and those employees on how they should conduct business. We're going to conduct business ethically. We're going to provide good quality to those consumers. We're going to have good customer service for those consumers out there. It is a foundation of that organization's culture. And it could be, or should be, summarized in that mission statement. As I mentioned, quality, customer service, dependability. Now, the organizational culture, let me ask you a question. Can the organizational culture, the values, the norms, the standards of how those employees work, their customer service, their quality that they have, can it provide a firm with a competitive advantage? Think of some firms out there and think of their culture, think of their values, think of their norms. Does it provide them with a customer service, competitive advantage?
Yes.
It could.
Yes, it is.
It could. Now, one of the things about that is that in order for that core values, the culture, to create a competitive advantage, they have to be able to exploit it. If only the organizational individuals know that they have good quality, good customer service, good reliability, and the customers don't know that, it doesn't do them any good. They have to be able to exploit it. You have to be able to let those consumers know these are the things that we're really, really good at. And these are the things that you really should consider when you're buying products out there. Goals and objectives. In each firm, the mission determines the objectives of that firm. Remember, the mission is the here and now. So the goals of that firm, they're based on two factors. One of them has to do with the stakeholders of the firm, whether the stakeholders want growth, profitability, diversification. That's all good and well and good for them to want that. The other determinant of that particular goal being achieved is whether or not the marketplace in which that firm is competing is able to allow that. If you're in a marketplace and that marketplace is at the mature stage of growth, if we're looking at the industry life cycle, growth is only 2 to 3%. But the stakeholders want growth of 7 or 8%. It's not going to happen. The market is not going to allow that because the market has already matured. So that needs to be considered when they're establishing what those goals are. Will the market support what those goals are for that firm? Goals, they're going to be broad, general in concept of what that organization intends to accomplish. They're going to provide an overall framework for determining more specific objectives. And in fact, that's what objectives are. They're going to be specific. So objectives are going to be precise. They're going to be measurable. They're going to have a desired state when that particular objective is going to be accomplished. They're going to have specific actions that that firm needs to take in order for them to attain that objective to meet the mission and the vision. So objectives are going to be precise and measurable. They're going to be specific. They're going to be realistic and achievable. They're going to have some specified time period that objective should be accomplished. And it should be aligning with and appropriate with that organization's vision and mission statement. So the two of them side by side looks like this. Goals are broad, objectives are narrow. Goals are general intention, objectives are precise. Goals are intangible, objectives are tangible. Goals are abstract, objectives are concrete. And goals by themselves can't be validated, but objectives can be validated. All right, guys, that brings us to there. We are done with the lecture for this evening. Nancy, I hope you haven't missed any more than about the second inning. Oh, you're watching it right now. What's the score? Nancy, what's the score?
0-0.
0-0. Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. All right. Guys, do we have any questions for this evening before I let you go? One thing I would recommend is that you guys exchange phone numbers so that you can contact each other. The emails, email addresses should be available on the, well, certainly on Corporation Simulation. I know they're there, but I would suggest you guys try and exchange contact information so you can talk to each other about the decisions that you're going to make this next week. Remember, not only naming your team, but once you name your team, then you got to go over and open up the decisions and start putting the decisions in as well. Let's see, I got a couple of chats here. Can we make a group chat on WhatsApp? There, Isaiah, good job. Nice thought, man. All right. Good job. All right, anybody have a question?
I just had a quick question in regards to the concept test.
Yep.
Is it timed or can we go at our own pace?
Go at your own pace.
Okay, thank
In
you.
fact, none of it is timed.
Okay,
I have left the timing open on that. So trying to make life easy, because I think Edwin pointed out that there's a lot of assignments, right? Edwin, didn't you say that?
Yes, sir. Yeah, there was a lot.
Yeah, so to make your life easy, there's no time limits on that, kind of go at your own pace. If you guys run into any issues or problems, please email me or text me. I will try and get back with you right away to help you solve that problem, okay?
Professor, question. For my group, we have 3 of us. You said you have to add the remaining students.
Yep.
Will you inform them to reach out to us, or should we?
I tell you what I'm going to do, Ben. I'm going to set the teams as they are. So most likely it'll be you and Jonah and Max having to probably make the first practice round decision. I will let them know that they're on your team, and I will give them your contact information. So of course I can't guarantee whether or not they're gonna reach out, but so I would.
Yeah, that's the issue.
But certainly, you know, if they missed, and I know 1 or 2 of them had something to do tonight that they did contact me that they were going to miss tonight. So they'll be back next week, so we can make sure that they're on a team next week. We're getting close, guys.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Let's see.
Just stay on Zoom for a sec as we like exchange numbers. I know everyone's throwing their stuff in the chat.
I tell you what, I'm going to jump off with my video and my speaker, and I'll let you guys exchange information, okay?
Thank you.
Professor, I did have a request real quick. Usually we the professors sign the groups after to meet after. Is that something we can do if everyone's agree with that, or if you okay with that? Like an example,